According to the Bible, some Magi, that is wise men from the east, saw a star connected to the Jewish Messiah. Then sometime later, the men arrived in Jerusalem searching for the Messianic Jewish king. However, from the text, we are not informed about their numbers, names, ethnic origins, or religious affiliation. And that leads to the question, who were these wise men, these Magi? According to some church traditions, it has been speculated and affirmed that the individuals in the group were from various ethnic and religious backgrounds. The names Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar are widely known, but it is not certain that the men went by these names. In contrast, many Syrian Christians name the Magi Larvandad, Gushnashaf, and Ormizdas. In other cultures, there are still other difficult names, at least difficult for me. Usually, three or four answers are given to the question, who were the wise men? And we will explore each of them briefly. First, it is often said that the Magi who came to Judea were Medes and or Persians. The men were supposedly from a Zoroastrian religious background. But the Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, identifies the Magi with a tribe of the Medes in what is today northwestern Iran. However, in Herodotus' text, the Median Magi were identified as interpreters of dreams, but not as astronomers or astrologers. In fact, very little is known about the specific details of Zoroastrian astronomy before about AD 250. The reputation of the Persian astronomers arose following the 3rd century AD, well after the birth of Jesus. Now, there are some other scholars who think that Matthew's Magi were Arabs, and at least one author has recently published a book which describes this idea in detail. And there is at least the possibility that some of the men could have been ethnically Jewish. In the book of Acts, the biblical book of Acts, Luke uses the word magus for a Jewish false prophet. And in Acts 13:6, we read that Paul's evangelism team came upon a certain magician, a Jewish false prophet named Bar Jesus. And the same word is used there. And as we shall see later, there are some reasons to think that, or to doubt that the men were Jewish, although there might have been some Jews in the group. However, in one manner or another, the men obviously must have had something to do with Judaism. Otherwise, they would have never embarked on a quest to find the Jewish Messiah. In Matthew's account, the men wanted to submit themselves to God's appointed Messianic king, the righteous one, the coming king, spoken of by Jeremiah, Daniel, Micah, and other prophets. By the time the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, was done in the 3rd century BC, the words Magi and Magus had come to be applied to many different people. Indeed, the word Magus was the name sometimes given to wise men, teachers, priests, physicians, astrologers, astronomers, seers, interpreters of dreams, augurs, soothsayers, and sorcerers. So there's quite a choice. Some of the church fathers, like Origen, Jerome, and Augustine, thought of the wise men as Babylonians. It is notable that in the Greek Septuagint translation of the Old Testament, the word Magi only appears in the book of Daniel. In addition, the Greek term wise men is more extensively employed in Daniel than anywhere else in the Old Testament. So it seems that there might be a connection. Yeah. It would seem entirely reasonable, in fact, that Matthew had this connection in mind when he wrote about the Magi from the east. None of the Magi cited in the book of Daniel would have been Persian or Median Zoroastrians. In Daniel, the references to Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian chronologically follow the passages concerning the Magi living under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar and his successors. Therefore, it would have been completely normal for Matthew, as a Jewish believer in the 1st century AD, using the Greek Septuagint translation of the Old Testament, to refer to certain Babylonians as Magi. In these videos, it is assumed, it will be assumed, that the wise men are probably, or were probably, Babylonians. At the time of Jesus, Babylonia was part of the Parthian Empire in what is modern-day Iraq, to the east of Judea. And ethnically, the region was made up of Babylonians, Greeks, Parthians, and even a very large number of Jews. Most everyone in the region of that region of the Parthian Empire spoke Aramaic, and many people spoke Greek. Greek influence was still strong in the region since the upper classes had been dominated by Greeks following the victories of Alexander the Great in the late 300s BC. At the time of Jesus' birth, the Parthians were still relatively new arrivals in Babylonia, and they had held power there for a bit over 100 years. The Magi who came to Judea seeking the Jewish Messiah would have probably spoken both Aramaic and Greek. Even if they were pagans, as curious scholars, they could have read at least portions of the Greek translation of the Old Testament. In addition, they could have been acquainted with some Aramaic oral translations of the Old Testament text, the Targums. And the Babylonian Magi were also quite able to use the cuneiform writing system. And to this day, thousands of cuneiform astronomical and astrological texts still exist, things that were written before and even after the birth of Jesus. And these things concern technical and observational astronomy and astrology. Yeah. So we'll be looking into some of those things later in another video. Now, the Greek writer Strabo mentions the Greek astronomers or the Babylonian astronomers in his book Geography that was written about AD 20. And he writes that they were divided into various groups with different dogmas about various subjects. And Kidinu, 4th century BC, mentioned in Strabo's text, may have been involved in developing a fairly precise manner for calculating the position and speed of the moon in the sky. Seleucus of Seleucia on the Tigris from the 2nd century BC is credited with being one of the first persons to attribute the tides to the interaction of the Earth and the moon. He also further developed the idea of a sun-centered solar system, which had been proposed by the Greek astronomer Aristarchus. It is even possible that some or all of the wise men who came to Bethlehem had opinions like Seleucus of Seleucia. They would have certainly been aware that the earth is round. Contrary to popular belief, it was well known in the ancient world that the earth is round. And you can see some more about that in some of my other writings. We will look at the technical abilities of the Babylonian Magi in further detail in other videos later in this series. As we shall see later, the specific mathematical and technical abilities of the Eastern Magi seem to be keys to understanding the symbolic message of the Messiah star. And we'll look at that in detail, because it is in the details that one sees what the star really is. Now, if you have not done so already, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel and to be looking out for other videos that will be produced in this series. And do put like if you like this video. You can also find more of my material on the Academia site, which you can see the address on your screen. Thank you for listening.